Can we do that? I read a great book recently, a business book that Butch Castle recommended to me called Start With Why. And it said, hey, before you start talking about what and how and being tactical, which a lot of us do, some people are big picture people. How many big picture people do we have? How many people like, they go, I don't care about that. I want to get down to the tactical. I want to know what to do. How many people are not awake at all? I get you. I have no idea what you're talking about. So what I want to talk about today is a life-giving church and why that's more important than truly almost anything else. That God has left a message for the world that has went for over 2,000 years that says a life-giving church could be the most incredible resource, could be the most incredible organization, could be the incredible movement that this world needs. And I want to talk to you a little bit about why, what we're like here. And I got a new T-shirt that Open made for me. I love my church, and that's good. And I wanted her to put down, but she wouldn't do it. Even Zuni, okay? Even people in Zuni, I love you guys too. Even my Zuni members, you're not lesser. But, hey, it is what it is. Okay, so you get the idea. But, I love New Branch Community Church. If you want a shirt like this, and ask me why. And that's what we want to talk about today. Why do I love this church? Why should we love this church? What should we do, and where is God leading us to? But before we go to where God's leading us to, let's talk a little bit about who we are. And so what I've done is you guys get to listen to me a lot. And so I've asked some people last week, and just so you know where we're going. By the way, if you want one of these T-shirts, Open said she can make them. And write it on your connection card, and we'll get some information for you. We may even do it kind of as a fundraiser for what we're about to do. So we'd love for you to have these. So if you just love our church and you want one of these shirts, that's great. And if you wanted to put even Zuni, we'll do that for you. Okay, but why we love the church, and what have we done, and where God has led us to, and are we accomplishing what God is calling us to do? And I believe that we are, and so I think it's better to listen to some other people. And so what I did last Sunday was I said, I need to do a video clip. A lot of us have been very busy with a lot of other things, and I said, we don't have time to do some kind of professional video. So with my camera last week, as people didn't leave, some people like hang out, so I said, I know they must like to talk. So I grabbed them and just took them in a room and videoed them with my phone, and I want to share kind of some of their testimonies with you today, if that's okay. Okay, so go ahead.
So we came to New Branch because we were looking for a family kind of oriented church, and we really feel like it's what we got here. So good tight-knit group.
Yeah, I've been going through divorce and having some hard times, looking for a place to turn, and ended up a lot of friends that invited me here to the same church, unknowingly, actually. When I came here, I had a family environment, personal environment, dysfunctional environment. Everybody's a little crazy, honestly. But I think that we all mesh together well. It does feel like a family. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but it's family. I've got 2 children. They both love coming here. It's a good group. I just love it. Like I said, it is a good family.
I started coming to New Branch, I was still on the Enterprise. What I've enjoyed most about coming here to New Branch that I've connected with, it started out in the community group that Cindy invited me to. It's just normal people here. I grew up in your traditional Southern Baptist, Free Will Baptist, Pentecostal church. It was kind of like, a Mississippi Squirrel Revival kind of thing where everybody's super holy and everybody has to be perfect. And it is a fashion show on Sunday. Don't wear the same thing twice. And, oh girl, you can't wear that after Labor Day. That's not this girl. So I really enjoyed just I don't want to say realness, but the genuineness of the people here. Pastor never gives up a good joke for Zuni. He is a legend in his own mind, but he's not the typical stuffy suit and tie, not in connection with reality type of preacher. Just ask him. He'll be more than happy to tell you at length, like 5 different Sundays in a row. It's awesome. Yeah, and I like the way the pastor, he brings the story out to where everybody understands it. I don't think anybody, like one of my favorite apostles was Peter. Why? Peter's a sailor. Now, it's always represented that Peter is a fisherman. Yeah, that's nice. Fishermen are sailors too. I'm sure Peter probably had a girl in age 41 too. And it's brought out in a way that I know I can connect to it. Yeah, you're going to want to edit this. never gonna fit back into civilian society. Anyway, because you know, everybody here sees me, Jessica Miller, but you know, you put me at work, you put me in uniform, you put me at sea, you put me in stressful situations where, you know, bullets are flying, people are dying, that sort of thing, and it's stress, and then you see that, yeah, you know, wow, she's a Christian. Yes, and it's my job to get my kids home and safe and alive back to their mommies and daddies again. And that's not always done with the cleanest language, with the nicest way to treat people, et cetera, et cetera. And here I think that God works through John in a way to where it presents that message. What? And my brother senior chief is over there telling me to shut up. So yeah, that's why I like Big Red.
And it's been great, and I'm glad that we have a pastor that preaches the Word of God. And because if he didn't, I wouldn't stay here. So if you ever get off course, I want to tell you.
One of the wonderful things about coming to New Branch, especially as a ordained minister coming in, Pastor John honored our desire to just sit like for a year and just heal. At that time, we were having a real struggle with finding ourselves again and getting back into ministry, and we healed after about a year. We felt like we were ready and had gotten quite involved in the church and seen a lot of awesome opportunities for ministry.
And before that, when we were healing here, because we didn't do anything for a solid year, nobody bothered us. And even though I think we had talked to Pastor John, so he knew some of our skill sets, you might say, but we just didn't want to be bothered at that time, and the church did not pressure us into anything. And that's another thing that we loved about Big Branch. And when we were ready and we felt that God was ready to use us again, was when we went back to Pastor John and said, I think we're ready to go in. So, yes. It was the love and the warmth that we felt when we first walked in this building, because I was really apprehensive being African American after coming from a couple of churches that used the N-word when they were referring to me. And so to come here to, at the time, well, mostly white church, and to feel that type of warmth and love, and that it was genuine, it said a whole lot about New Branch. And so when I came, I knew it was at home.
I had 4 teenagers, and I wanted to get them into teens ministry. And at that time, there was only 2 teenagers actually at the teens ministry. So it was kind of funny because Bonnie had told us, if your kids don't come and my kids don't come, we don't have teens group. And then if Pastor Johnson don't come, so that was kind of funny. But I don't know, the kids, they loved it here whenever we came. They enjoyed coming to the teens, and whenever I know my kids say that they enjoy it and they're involved in it and they're feeling like they're being fed, that's where I want to be at. Whenever our first time coming, one of the main reasons we came back was because Pastor John he was just goofy. He's very hilarious. And he gives me the evil eye sometimes because I'm laughing at, and when he says miracle, that just cracks me up, and I don't know why, but he's like miracle, and I'll just be dying laughing. But anyway, he's not a stuffy preacher. He's very outgoing. But me and my family, this is home to us now.
We came with Brandy, looked around at all the different churches around here, and we just never felt comfortable or at home or welcome at all. But when we came here, the first day I came, I felt very welcome. Having anxiety, I felt very calm, very accepted. So, and then We love everyone in the little children's ministry that works with Caleb. They do really good with him.
I like the church because it's all down to earth. It's not stuffy.
That's good.
You might say, and I love your messages. My husband and I, we started coming, my brother Rick and my mom and Bobby here, all of his family, and we, David saw the need in the band, and he enjoyed playing the guitar, and I started coming and joined the people. People are very down to earth, friendly, and not a stuffy church whatsoever. The pastor, he's okay. He's okay too. No, we really enjoy his messages, and that he really knows the Bible, and he makes a difference in our lives, and we really enjoy him for that reason.
All right, so I'd like to thank them for doing that and allowing me to do that. And they said, hey, they didn't have to see it before we put it up, so hopefully you guys are pleased with it. I was, because, when we talk about why and what, as a church planter, God gives you a vision for what you want to do, and what I believe God is calling us to do. And one of the things we look at over 6 years is have we done that? And what we've seen is that our the vision of saying, hey, would God connect to the one? Would God connect to somebody that's broken? And some of these people have been here for a while. Some of the people on the video have been here since Easter. And to see God working in people's lives, it goes, hey, the dream that I believe God's given us has now become a reality. And there's some amazing things with that. And so what I'd like to do today is as we start a brand new series that I believe is going to lead to real change, maybe one of the most incredible series that there could be possibly, is to really start with, hey, that's awesome that we're doing that. And for some of us, we're going, man, that's really great, because some of you guys in the room have been here since day one. And you go, the sacrifices that were made to get us here, some people that made the sacrifices are no longer with us. I mean, a lot of people have died over the last 6 years, and they're no longer here, but they paid it forward. And today we see life change, and it's just absolutely incredible, and God be praised for it, because we know we started an impossible church with impossible people, and to see that God is using that to reach people is absolutely incredible. But one thing that comes as a challenge from that is this, and I think that's why we kind of need to talk, and that's why I got a stool so I'm not too preachy. I don't know that I can help it, but I'll try to sit down and relax, is this, and just kind of talking informally to say, hey, where is God taking us to from here? And the danger, there's a danger, and there's also a challenge, and there's also something that could be incredible, is that where God has brought us to, it would be terrible if we drifted from who we are, And we've tried a lot of things over the years, and maybe you've seen it, and some things have worked and some things haven't. But not to change. I don't know if you've ever seen that happen to a church where they turn into something that they were never meant to be. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's like, we're going to take it to another level, and then they become something that's not them. That would be a shame. There's also another danger, and that's this, that we would sit back and go, well, we've accomplished all that we can, and now that's as good as it gets. Or to become complacent to the place where we say, you know what, I kind of like the way it is, so I don't want to do any more to grow any further, because I like it small. Can I tell you something? I do too. I grew up in a small church. I grew up in a small country church, and it was awesome. But I think there's a compelling reason to not do that. And the first place I want to start is, why? Why do we want to grow? Because when we started this church, can I tell you how we started? We said, this church is not about a building. One, we had to kind of lead with that, because when people walked in, they went, you have concrete floors. You didn't see the building back then. It was a warehouse space, didn't have air conditioners, didn't have bathrooms, and people came in, and we had to say, well, church is not about the building, okay? We're glad to have a building. We learned not to say that too quick, because we said that early on, and then God didn't give us a building until the last month, right before we started. So we said, well, a building is important. We still have to gather, and then people graciously helped renovate this spot, and it's been awesome, and it's fulfilled so many needs in our lives. But I believe that sometimes God calls us to go even further, and that's what we want to explore. One of the things that's happened for me is over the last year, if not longer, I've been looking at a parable that I heard from a pastor, and then I heard it from another pastor, and then I started reading it, and I studied it, and of course I've looked at commentaries and all that, but more than that, what I've been looking at is God, what are you trying to say to me? What are you trying to say to New Branch through this? And so what I want to do over the next 6 weeks is share this very thing that I think is challenging. You know, Jesus said this. He said, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it, or the gates of Hades. And as I studied that out, originally I thought, and I think there's a connotation that means people that are lost and are doomed to an eternal hell, which is true. But it actually means more of this. It means that what Jesus was talking about, he said there are people that are alive right now that are trapped behind the gates of hell, Satan's system in this world. That's what it means. That in this world, there's a system that Satan has created, and you can feel trapped, and you can feel alone, and you can be trapped behind those walls. And he said, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it, which means the church has the ability to kick in the gates of hell and to rescue people from the other side. And the beauty of the church is this, is that the ones that God is calling to help those people are the ones that have been behind those gates before. You ever been there? Unconnected, all alone, don't know about God, don't know about any of that, and he's called us to reach out. And I truly believe that's what New Branch Community Church has tried to do. We've never been about numbers. We don't announce numbers, and there's a reason, because I don't believe it's about one number, the one that's lost that God has called us to reach out to. We've never been about buildings, other than we know we need a building to meet in, and we know people have made tremendous sacrifices to get us to this building that we have. But we said, hey, it's not just about that the church isn't a building, it's a people, right? It's a relationship, it's a family. And we've never been about favoritism. We said, hey, when we started this church, we said, there's no special parking, not even for me. Somebody told me that the other day. I pulled up late because I was at the pastor's breakfast, and they actually thought I was late. And I was like, no, I hadn't. We were hanging out with new people and stuff like that. And they're like, well, do you have a parking space? And I was like, yeah, wherever everybody else parks, because there's no special people. There might be roles of leadership, but there's no special people when you walk through these doors. That's the way it is. If the President of the United States come, he doesn't get special parking, okay? But he's also, no matter what his politics are, no matter who's the president, they're welcome here. I don't care. We don't care what your politics are. We don't care what your social views are. That you're all welcome at the foot of the cross. And we're willing to pray for that. So if he comes, he's welcome to come here. But no special place. You get the idea? That's the church that we dreamed of. And that's the church I believe that God has created. Not us, but God. Not me as the head. Christ as the head of this church. And it's his vision for his people. And it's what we've done. But I believe that God is calling us further. And the danger here is this, is that we could sit back and say, hey, we made it. Or can I tell you something else? I think along the way, there's been some people that have gotten hurt. And I think that they haven't left. Some people have left over that. That's fine. Because church, by the way, loving God is easy. Loving people is much more hard. And over time, maybe you've kind of drifted. And you said, you know what, I did try to get involved, or you changed some things, or you tried something that didn't work, or you tried something that did, and it kind of pushed me out, and I don't know if you care about me anymore, and they kind of sit on the sideline, and I believe God is challenging us to go further. And today I want to explain why, and I think it's found in this parable. So if you'll look with me to Luke chapter 14, if you'll turn with me in your notes, and I'm just going to read it off the screen if that's okay with everybody. It says this, Luke chapter 14 in verse 15, it says, when one of those at the table with him heard this. So let me explain what that means first, because oftentimes if you pick up in the middle of a verse, you might not know what it means. So Jesus was at a party, okay? How many people like parties? I was at one last night, and it was awesome, and they roasted a pig. Now, he didn't do that. They were Jews, so they didn't do that. But they had a big party, and for all intents and purposes, this was very prominent people. Now, some parties are fun, like we had last night, where, you know, you sit down, and you're sitting around picnic tables, and you're out in the country, and that kind of thing. And then other parties are kind of stuffy. You ever been to one of those? Where political people are there, and you know what they're fighting about? Who sits where, and who's wearing what. And Jesus saw that, and he kind of started to break their paradigm down, and he said, he's sitting here with these very prominent people that invited him and his apostles, and he said, you know, you shouldn't kind of jockey to sit at the best place at the table. In fact, let somebody ask you. He's basically saying humble yourself. And then he said something else that was really strange to them, because these people, they were kind of uppity, you know. It's like us and them kind of people. You know, like we're the rich people and they're the poor people. We're too smart. We're smarter than them, that kind of thing. Kind of like a lot of politicians. Okay, yeah. And so he was sitting around a room full of politicians, and Jesus says, you know what you really should do? Instead of invite your friends to a nice banquet like this, you should invite the poor. And oh man, it about blew their minds. What, here with us? Oh, we give to the poor, but we don't invite them to come in with us. And so they wanted to change the subject, and that's where this comes up. Luke chapter 14 and verse 15. When one of those at the table heard him say this, He said to Jesus, "Blessed is the one who will eat at the feast in the kingdom of God." Now, you'll have to go back and read it for yourself what he's trying to say here. One, either he thinks he's going to be at the feast and he thinks he's really awesome, or I think more than that, I think what he was doing is Jesus, you're losing the crowd because you went a little bit negative with them. That's not what they're about, so you need to influence the influencers, so please back off of what you're saying, Jesus, and let's focus on the kingdom of God. I think that's really what he's saying. And Jesus heard that, and Jesus, being a master communicator, said, okay, well, let me tell you what the kingdom of God is like. Let me tell you what it's going to be like at the end. Let me tell you the vision that God has. Let me tell you the why. Okay, you ready? Verse 16. Jesus replied, "A certain man was preparing a great banquet." Now understand, Jesus being a great communicator, what he's doing here is this. He tells a story. That's oftentimes good. Instead of pointing the person out, it's easier to talk about somebody else. And because Jesus doesn't gossip, he doesn't say, that's what these people are like, let's gossip. He says, let me just tell you a fictional story. So here's what he does, this parable. Jesus replied, "A certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests." Now, I don't know if you've ever been in charge of planning a big event, but that's what this was, right? Like a wedding. I've been part of many weddings in the last couple months, like 4 in a row in the month of September. And there's a lot of planning and preparation, and it gets crazy, okay? And people, if you want to see people at their worst, do that, okay? but parents, if you're a parent here today, and I'm looking around, and some of you guys are, and you've had to prepare one of these, it costs a lot of money, right? So he's preparing a great banquet. Think of it like a wedding where you're going to spend a lot of money. And what do you want to do? You're going to invite guests and you're going to RSVP. Why? Because these plates are $100 a piece or whatever they are. You know what I mean? And so we want to make sure people are coming. And sometimes they're even more than that. Okay. So verse 17. At that time of the banquet, he sent his servants to tell those who had been invited, "Come, for everything is now ready." Now, that's smart. Okay. And what he's doing is this, is something that I forgot sometimes. It's like you send out an email, you've put it down for all these months, and you've been thinking about it, and so you think everybody's going to show up, and he knows, no, they're not. They're going to forget. This is my big day. It's not their big day. And so he's giving one last reminder. "Servant, go tell them remind them that the banquet is today," like we do, right? You send out a text and say, "Hey, did you know the meeting's tonight?" And they go, "I had no idea," right? "I'm sorry, you RSVP'd. Do you not have a calendar? I mean, what's wrong with you," right? I mean, that's kind of what they're thinking. But this is what happened. And so he starts to invite them, and he's going, "We spent a lot of money. You've already RSVP'd. We spent a lot of money on this banquet. I want to make sure you're there. This is a big event." And this means that this is attached to a relationship. You know what I'm saying? You ever had those events where it's like, if you miss this, that's going to be a problem. That's this kind of event, okay? It's like a wedding where you go, somebody invited you to the wedding, and you kind of said, okay, let me show you what they say, okay? Verse 18. "But they all alike begin to make excuses." Can you underline that? Now, they've already RSVP'd. They already said they were going to come to this. He's already spent the money, and he's laid out the banquet. Anybody know how that feels? Okay. "And the first one said what? I have just bought a field, and I must go and see it. See, I got work to do. Please excuse me." Okay, you get the idea. Verse 19. "Another said, I have just bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me." Okay, verse 20. "Still another said, I just got married, so I can't come." Right? All these people were pretty busy. Verse 21. "The servant came back and reported this to the master." So, by the way, how would you like to be the servant? They didn't have text back then, so he didn't get to do it himself, but this guy's coming, and he's about to tell the guy, look, the banquet's ready, right? I mean, it's coming tomorrow, and what? Everybody made excuses. Then the owner of the house became what? Angry. You want to circle that? Very important. The emotion that you feel when this happens, you ever felt this emotion? When you prepared this big wedding and then they didn't show up, by the way, that makes people mad, okay? Don't RSVP. If you say no, that's fine, but if you say yes, please be there. That's okay, get the idea. Verse 22, you know who you are. Okay, all right, 21. and he ordered his servant. What I like you to circle is servant. We're going to come back to all these words. That's why I'm asking you to circle. We're going to look at this over the next 6 weeks. Okay? So 21 goes on to say, after he says he's angry, and he ordered his servant, circle that, go. So circle servant and circle go. Go quickly into the streets and the alleys in the town and bring in, you can underline it, the poor, the crippled, the blind, the lame. It's very important, very significant what we're going to talk about here. Go. And so basically he's saying, I got all these seats. Those people don't appreciate it. Go find somebody that does. You know who will appreciate it most? You know who will show up first? Is those that are starving to death, the poor, right? If you go invite them, by the way, the poor, and they're great to hang out with too, right? Because why? Because they're so appreciative. You haven't eaten in a long time, guess what you're eating tonight? Steak and lobster. You want to come to this? We have a Captain George's buffet dinner, all paid for, and all you got to do is come and enjoy it and act like you enjoy it. That's all we want you to do. You don't have to believe everything. You don't have to do all that. Just come act like you enjoy it and like us, and you're welcome. And you know what? The poor come. That's why he said go quickly. That's very easy. And the poor come in, and the poor come in. Okay, verse 22. Sir, the servant said, what you ordered has been done, but there is still more room. Okay? So there's empty tables. There's food that's going to go to waste. What do I do now? All right? Do you want it full? Do you want to just use what we have here? You want to throw it away? What do you want to do? Verse 23. Then the master told his servant, go. I want you to underline that. Go. Go out to the roads and the country lanes. And what? And compel. Circle that. Really big part of this section. Go out now to the country lanes and compel them to come in so that my house will be full. There's room at the table. Compel them to come in. In verse 24, I'd like to leave this one off, but it completes. This is Jesus, so I don't think I need to correct him, right? I tell you, not one. You want to circle that? Not one of those who were invited will get a taste of my banquet. The ones that made the excuses, they're not going to get a taste of my banquet. And then I think Jesus sat down and saw, what did they think about that? Let that sit with you for a minute. It's easy for me because I've been thinking about this and praying about this and thinking about this and praying about this and thinking about this. And I want you to do the same. Because this word is to us. Now, granted, it was to the Jew to say, hey, the Jews are not sitting at his table, and it's going to move to the Gentiles. That's a piece of it. But I also believe this is to the church that's saying, God is calling us to do something with this. He's compelling us with this particular passage that challenges us, and I believe at a time in the life of our church where we have a decision to make about this very thing. So here's what I want to do. All I want to do today is this. I just want to point out the main characters of the story, and then I have something I want to challenge us to do, okay? So the characters in the story, just to make sure we got it straight, is God is the owner. God is the master. God is the person that owns the banquet, okay? He's inviting everybody to this banquet. And the banquet is a relationship with God himself. He's going, hey, it's not just the marriage supper of the Lamb. What it is it's a banquet, the same thing that Jesus says where he says, I'll kick in the gates of hell, right? I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. He's saying, this is God's invite to all of the world, the feast of God. And you come here and you enjoy the benefits of God, but you also, there's another big part to this feast, and this is one of the things that at the beginning they're missing. It isn't just about enjoying what's on the table, it's enjoying who's at the table. You're celebrating this master. It's not just what's on the table, although, by the way, God has an incredible banquet table, and I think it looks a lot like Captain George's, but that's just me, okay? You don't like seafood, won't make sense to you, okay? I don't know. Maybe there's rednecks in heaven, maybe there's, I don't know, butter beans and cornbread and chitlins. I don't think they're in heaven. Okay, but anyway, we'll leave it at that. Okay, so you get the idea. There's not people in heaven. Not people go to heaven. It's okay. We'll have chitlins in heaven. It's all right. All right. So the banquet is God's major invite to say, come here and receive my blessing. But the biggest thing, it represents a relationship with God himself. And the people that were the disgruntles at the beginning are those that know God in their head, but it hasn't seeped down to their heart in a while. Or maybe they know him, but they all of a sudden said, yeah, you know what I'm in it for? I'm in it for me. And God is saying, really? And I'll do it as long as it doesn't cost me anything. And I'll go there as long as it don't cost me any time. And the excuses start to come. Life is busy. Life is difficult. I got things to do. After all, I just got married. I can't be asked to do anything. I can't be asked to show up there. This is on an off time for me, God. I got some oxen. I got a business I'm trying to run. I got all these things I'm trying to do. Can I tell you what God thinks of that? We'll talk about that next Sunday. He's angry. I didn't say it, he did. He's holding a little bit of a grudge here. He's saying, hey, and rightly so, because you got to understand. I better sit down. You got to understand, right? You got to understand what it means, okay? God doesn't hold a grudge, but let me tell you why he's angry. Because he gave, the banquet is paid for by the blood of Jesus Christ. And he's saying, you're making excuses for why you can't be part. Wouldn't that make you mad? If you gave the most precious things, one thing if you pay a lot of money, right? We're mad at a wedding, we're almost ready to go, hey, we're not friends anymore, right? But imagine if you said, I'll take my one and only son, and I'll allow him to die. And you take my one and only son, and you go, yeah, I don't really have time for that. God is angry, and he's challenging us, and maybe we didn't understand it that way, and that's why Jesus is telling the story. I think Jesus is saying, hey, I don't want to hold a grudge. What I want to do is I want to offer you help and hope. But you got to understand where you are, and if that's you, then pick up on it. It was me, okay? So don't think we don't need to compare. The person in the story I fit most with is the people making the excuses for why we can't. You get it? And then the other person in the story is the servant. You see, we're thinking that in the story, the followers of Jesus are the ones sitting at the table, but it isn't. You see, the followers of Jesus in the church are the servants. We've sat at the banquet table, right? We've tasted of the risen Christ. And he's saying, after you've tasted, you can't keep it to yourself. Get up from the table and invite them to come in. And how do we invite them to come in? The first thing we do is we invite the poor. And let me say something. We've seen it in the church, right? When we say poor, don't be offended by that. The poor mean those that are spiritually blind, those that are hurting, those that are broken, those that, just like in the video that we showed, they go, hey man, I was all alone. I didn't have people. I was going through a painful divorce. I was going through painful stuff with my kids. I just found out my kids were struggling with something. My family just went bankrupt. You know what? All kinds of things, right? Things that we can't even talk about here today that breaks us up, that makes us crippled and lame. Some of us it's physical, some of it's not though, right? Some of it's even beyond physical. And he's saying, open up the doors. And can I tell you something about them? We never thought this. We didn't even have a proper sign when we opened this church, and people just showed up. You know why? Because if you open the doors, the poor and the crippled and the lame that are looking for help and hope, they'll just come right through the doors. That's the easy part, okay? The poor and the lame, they'll listen to anything. They're so grateful for whatever they get. It's awesome. And if that's you, that's great. Can I tell you something? There was a time in my life when that was me. There's one last piece to the story, though, and that's not only the poor, but the outsider. And this is the biggest part of this story. And for our church, this is the biggest part of the vision. There are those that if you open the door, they're just going to come in. Can I tell you where I think the church has went from? There was a time in our nation where if you had Sunday service, everybody knew you were just supposed to go, right? Can I tell you, that is not where we live now. I don't know if you live in that, you're thinking that, but that's not true. And the sad part and the sad reality is there's many people driving down our roads in 460 and 58 and all the way out in some roads in Zuna. And they don't know. You see the poor person looking for it, they're going, let me in, and they go, it's the easiest person, go quickly, and they'll come in quickly. But the person that's out there on the road and kind of knows but doesn't know, and they're trapped in their life and they don't know, but you know what? They don't know we're here. Oh, they don't have complaints about us. They don't hate the church. The church is irrelevant. You want to know why? Because they don't even know about us. It's one of the things that I like about them, right? I've never had a complaint yet from an outsider. You know why? They've never been here. I've never had one person that didn't attend our church to say, you know what, I want to tell you something about your church that's frustrated me. Why? Because they don't even know. And God is saying it is our job as his servants to get up from the table and to go out in the highways and the byways, right? In fact, what it said here is go out in the highways, go out in the country roads. See, Zuna, you are in there. Go out on those country roads, even the dirt roads, right? I mean, some of those, I don't even know if you call those roads, but okay, whatever. They don't show up on GPS, I can tell you that. And but even those roads, and he said, compel them to come in. Compel them to come in. Compel them to come in. You know what that means? The compelling part. This is the part that's difficult. It's going to cost you. To reach the poor, it doesn't cost you hardly nothing. I mean, you can give money, and that's fine. To reach these people, it's going to take sacrifice. By the way, they're consumers. So in order to get them here, you have to do some of the consumer things. So people, I'm so against consumerism. Yeah, I am too, for church people. But the problem is that the first group are the ones that are at the table and have tasted and know the Christ, and he's invited them in, and they're going to make excuses for, I can't do this. You know what? If you're going to ask me to help fund this, I'm not going to do it. Can I tell you something about people that are out there? They're not going to give a dime to help their own salvation. Can I tell you something? Not one person that came and got saved in this church early on, they didn't help support this ministry. It was people that knew from the table, and they said, you know what? God is compelling me. Not John. Not a church with a slick business model. That's not it, right? Nobody wants to give to that anyway. By the way, it doesn't work. But you could browbeat people enough to give money. But the ones that give the most, the ones that have stuck it out, the ones that said, you know what, I'm here for God's purpose, which is to reach the lost. Why? Because, you know what, I was that lost person. You couldn't, there's no amount of money in the world that would take me away from that, right? There's no amount of money in the world that would say, if you've been trapped behind the gates of hell, what would you pay to get somebody else out of it, right? That's what God's calling. Compel them. Make the biggest invite. Now, let me explain what it is and what it isn't. We are not the table. That's bought and paid for by the blood of Christ. What's on the table is what only God can give. That's not us. If we say that, dude, please run away, okay? We're a new branch, not new vine, okay? There's a vine, and it's Jesus. And what I'm telling you is that what God is allowing us to do is he's saying, you're the servant. You don't need to prepare the banquet table. I have everything they need. Your job is to get them to the table. And here's the problem. For some of us, we're going to go, but I don't have time for that. Or you know what, I got a little bit hurt over here. I don't think I can do that. You know, I'm a little bit busy right now. You know what, I got cancer. You know what, I'm in pain. You know what, I have hurts and habits and hang-ups and all these things, but God has rescued you, and he's calling you to rescue more. And so what I want to do as a church is this. We could go in two ways. We could say, you know what, we don't like big church, us four and no more. Nobody's complaining. Majority of people like the way it is. I know that. The majority in here. But what I'm asking for is this. What about those we need to compel? Well, how many is that? Maybe you don't know. I do. It's the number that haunts me every day of my life. On our country roads, within a 45-minute circle, there are 30,000 unchurched people. Let me make sure I explain the demographic to you so you make sure you understand. These are people that were asked by the government, do you go to church? Now let me ask you, was there a time in your life where you said, do you go to church? And you checked, yep. I think the number's bigger, don't you? More people say, yeah, I want to make sure. These are people that actually would say on a poll, when taking a consensus, that would say, I'm not part of a church. And it's our job to compel them. And here's what I want to do over the next 6 weeks. I want us to challenge each other, not me, but to hear from God, to read the story, to look at it and say, what things do we need to do? I believe one thing is this. We need to take a look at this building and say, is this the biggest invite that we can make? Do we need a bigger building? This might take us some time. I've told you before, I don't believe that the building is what the church is all about, okay? But I do believe this. When I look at our kids' spaces, I think we've ran out of space. And I think there's some consumer parents that would come in and go, that's not enough space for my kid. That doesn't compel them enough, right? We're not talking about insiders, we're talking about outsiders, right? And that we could do more to compel them. Understand it will cost us, right? And we got to pray about it. And we've never been one to share what we're given, and we'll never do that. But what we want to do is this. We want to give you an opportunity to say, hey, you got ideas. Let's dream what God can do. You know what? When we started this church, let me tell you why I start with why. Because if you start with what, you don't have enough. And I got a feeling there's people in the room going, oh, here we go. I don't have enough to give to God on this. I've already tapped out. But let me tell you something. When we started the church, we were in the same boat. And somehow, God did what we couldn't do. He took what we had and he multiplied it. That's why we want to share the stories of the Bible to say he can take, 5 little fish and 2 loaves of bread and feed 5,000 people. Well, I believe he can take the 200 plus people we have here and can reach out to 30,000. I believe it. I don't know how he's going to do it. I don't pretend to know who he's going to lay on your heart to give what. And you might say, I don't have any money to give. And maybe you can give your time and your talent and your treasures. Maybe it's time to serve again. Maybe it's time to dream again. There's all kinds of things we can talk about and how we can do it. And I want to get into the practical side of it. And we're going to have a vision gathering, and we're going to do all kinds of things. But I don't want you to think it's going to be creepy. It's simply one thing. And I want to make sure you get the why, because if you don't get the why, you might go, I don't think I want to be part of that. But if you get the why, I got a feeling you will want to be part. One thing, to compel them to come in. Compel them to come to the feast of God. You been there? If you have, you're going, God, please help me to do everything I can to reach one more. And if we can do that, that's all that we're asking, okay? To make room for them. So here's where I want to end today. One step that we could take today in that direction. I don't want you to give money today. My elder board just cringed. I'm just playing. I got to meet with them after church today. How dare you? But I think they would agree with this. They would agree with this. Don't give today, okay? I mean, now, if you give your tithes and your offerings, please give that. I don't want you to give above and beyond yet, because here's what I want you to do. I want you to pray. You know, there's a time to share the gospel, and there's a time not to. Maybe you didn't know that. You know when you don't share the gospel? Let me tell you how it went, because we never hear this part of the story. In Acts chapter 2, we love the part where 3,000 people got saved and baptized, right? That's an incredible gospel message. But you know, when Jesus ascended into heaven, he said, why do you stand here gazing up into heaven? Go and share the gospel, right? And you know what they did? They went and they sat in a room for 10 days. You know why? Because he said, before you do, wait. For what? Wait for the power of the Holy Spirit. Because if you think you can do this in your own strength, you know where New Branch is going to fail with this? Is if we go, yeah, we could do that. Well, you ain't doing much, right? Or more than that, I'm praying that somebody in the room is going, we can't do this. The vision that God, or the vision you're talking about, John, we can't do this. That's right, we can't. God can. And God can't use me to do this, John. I got too many hang-ups. I got too many habits. Let me tell you something. God can, but we have to wait on him. So what I'm asking for is this. Over the next, till November 20th, I didn't count the days. It doesn't matter how many days that is. I know that's Thanksgiving week, so we're going to stop there. We're going to ask you to pray and fast. And fasting, you don't have to not eat till November 20th. But what we would like to ask you to do is, would you give up a meal? Would you give up a day of meals? Would you maybe give up 3 days of meals? I don't know. I don't know what God's leading you into in this fast. Maybe it's stopping television. Maybe it's going, hey, don't watch any more things about the election until this thing is over, okay? Because it will bring joy back in your life, just that, okay? Turn your TV off, right? Maybe that's what God's calling you to do. I don't know, but fasting something so you can get close to God to hear. And then while you're doing it, pray for our country. But what I want you to really pray for is that we will become the church. That we'll be the church. And what is your part? What is God calling you to do? And for some of us, he's going to go, that's not much, but that's what God's calling me to give. For others, it's going, I can't believe that God's calling me to this. And I've heard people say it. And we don't want to limit what God's calling you to do, because sometimes you're going, hey, I'm trusting God. He's going to provide this, and we're going to do this over a nice 3-year time period to say, hey, we want to raise some money to do some more missions and giving. But more than just money, we want to also ask you, are you serving? Are you part? Are you serving where God wants you to? Or have you got disgruntled and you're just making excuses to God? Maybe it's time to step up. See what I'm saying? And to make room. And to be part of Jesus Christ's mission to build his church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. You know what I'm saying? Make room for who? That's what I want you to pray about. Who is it that God is calling us to do? What is it we need to do to reach them? Not make a big name for ourselves. That's God, right? He's got the banquet. But making room to say, what is it we need to do to compel them? And let's do that. Let's get behind that, and let's see what God can do when we come together. And here's what I know. If you know somebody that's trapped, would you pray for them? Would you start praying now, God, how can we do that? And by the way, you got this whole church that wants to come behind you to help you with that. Can we do that? And I think it's going to be absolutely awesome. So here's what I want you to do. For the next, till November 20th, would you pray with us? And the other thing is this. We're going to have a whole day of prayer on November 5th. And we're not asking you to come for the whole day, but we would like it if you could at least sign up for 30 minutes, okay? On November 30th, this is Saturday. And I know we're asking for a lot, right? We're asking for a day. That's okay. 30 minutes. And we got the sign-up sheet out in the lobby, and if I can do math in my head, that's 24 people that we need to pray, okay? And if more than that, even better. What would God do if the church, and I think that's before the election, right? So what if the church came together and prayed? What do you think you could do? If we fasted and prayed and asked God, I think he'll speak to you. And what we want as the leaders of this church is one thing. Whatever God's telling you to do, do that. and that'll be more than what we need. I believe it. And that's it. Okay? We want to start with prayer, and then we got several other activities. We'll get into those later. But for now, what I want you to do is go home today, start praying. Start praying as a family. Start getting your kids involved. We got all kinds of ideas to get them involved, and they can. And we will be surprised what God can do as he builds his church. Can we stand for prayer?